I'm Jack Williams, General Manager of EWTN Radio. Welcome to the Catholic Sphere. Each week we tackle topics important to Catholics around the globe with a different host and a different focus. This week we're talking about women in Catholic radio. To help us along this journey, we're pleased to be joined today by Teresa Holman, the co-founder and assistant general manager of Covenant Network Catholic Radio in St. Louis, Missouri. Donetta Robin, executive director of Divine Mercy Radio in Hays, Kansas. And Bernadette Boguski, the executive director of The Rock, WCCR in Cleveland, Ohio. Ladies, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Now, the Catholic radio phenomenon started back in 1996 from an AM/FM standpoint. Mother launched the shortwave network in 1992. And most of the calls that were fielded in the early days came from groups or individuals that were generally led by men or a group of men. We had several Curcio prayer groups full of men and things that were involved in this. But there were a handful of women even from the very beginning, and we're very excited today to explore the unique qualities and charisms that women have to bring to the Catholic radio effort. And, Bernadette, I want to start with you. You were not there at the very beginning of the start of The Rock in Cleveland, but that faithful small group of people that got that station on the air, one of their first priorities was to raise the money they would need to hire a general manager, and that general manager and executive director ended up being you.
Yes. I had approached the organization. I was a donor and a listener to the station, and I approached them at an exhibit where I was working for another nonprofit, and I said I would like to get more involved. And so I ended up joining the board shortly before they had drafted a description for the executive director position. And when I saw the description for that position, I knew I had to raise my hand for it. And so I joined the organization in December of 2016, which was about a year and a half after we went on the air.
And Teresa, you were there. You and your husband, Tony, are really the driving forces behind that little AM radio station in Edwardsville, Illinois, that led to the 40-plus stations that make up the Covenant Radio Network now. Talk about those early days and just how you guys got off the ground there in St. Louis.
Well, it was an interesting start because really there wasn't any Catholic radio at all when we got started. There was a station in Alaska and there was a station in Portland that was carrying some Catholic radio, but no full-time Catholic radio. And then we met some people at a conference in California, and we started learning about options for Catholic radio. And Tony, my husband at the time was my fiance, was had a call to do Catholic radio. And so he had previously actually met and talked with Mother Angelica about doing Catholic radio. And we knew shortwave was there, so we knew we had the option to use some of the programming. But he began then searching for a radio station, and he went out and met with people, and I would go and pray while he met with people. I'd go to adoration to pray, and we ended up just buying the first station, just going cold and buying it without any experience really in radio. And since then, little by little, one after another, the station's gone from that one little AM station in Edwardsville, Illinois, to now we're getting ready to launch our 44th radio station.
Unbelievable. All those many years ago when you were just Tony's fiance, and now you have a daughter that's getting married.
We do. Yes, we do. Yes, it's very exciting. It's been, and I think most of the Covenant Network family know about our daughter and have watched her, and people that have asked me are like, there's no way she's getting married already, but it's happened. And I think that is just, we feel like the Covenant Network is a family of our listeners, and they've watched our family grow over these years too.
Now, we've been to Cleveland and we've been to St. Louis, which have a certain amount of metropolitan feel to them, but Catholic radio has really become a presence just about everywhere in the country. And Donetta, it's not exactly a booming metropolis there in Hays, Kansas. How did you all get started?
Well, kind of like St. Paul maybe did. You know, God takes our personalities and he just uses them for his purpose. But I was just listening to the Christian radio station locally, and it seemed like on the talk shows they were always kind of putting down the Catholic Church, but not saying the word Catholic. And you know, I'm a justice person. I always thought they should have a Catholic on there to give our viewpoint. And so one day I just called EWTN and I said, well, first of all, I called the head of our stewardship of our tri-parishes locally, and I said, can we get a Catholic radio station started? And he says, you do it. I'm too busy. So I stupidly, I think, called EWTN and said, how do I get a Catholic radio station started? And they put me in touch with the Catholic Radio Association at the time. And it just so happened that that was in 2006. So in 2007, I believe the FCC was opening airwaves to apply for licenses, and I applied for one. I didn't receive that, but somebody who did get a license locally called us and sold us a license, and that was an issue in itself, just negotiating. So, but yeah, they started out at $50,000. They wanted to sell the license. Now, for people who aren't in Catholic radio, that's just a piece of paper to say build a station, right? And so I negotiated down to $15,000. But so that's kind of how that worked. And then we got it up and going, and God sent all the right people my way. So I'm there, just very thankful. And I didn't know a thing about radio. As a matter of fact, I'm not a very good tech person. So when I do troubleshoot or do something technologically correct, I know it's not me, it's the Holy Spirit. So that's kind of how we got started.
Well, you know,
I dragged my husband into it.
Well, there you go. That's as well you should have. And this is, this is a show about women in Catholic radio, and really the driving force behind this whole endeavor was Mother Angelica, who, by the way, was a woman. And I know, Teresa, that you had the opportunity, I think, on several occasions to meet Mother Angelica. I know that your husband, Tony, did, and I don't think Bernadette and Donetta had the opportunity, but I'm sure that Mother Angelica, those meetings with her had an impact on you, and I'm sure, Teresa, that she has influenced you probably even up to this day as you run that apostolate.
Absolutely. I think Mother inspired me more than anyone, maybe other than the Blessed Mother, to be a strong woman, because I saw her. I'll never forget the very first time we had a Catholic conference, a radio conference at Birmingham, and one of the things that I remember most about Mother is there was a very small group of us, I think maybe 10, maybe 15 people at this meeting. And I remember we were waiting because we were going to get to meet Mother Angelica, and we were all just very, very excited, very, very anxious to meet her. And we were sitting there, and you could hear her and some people following her coming down the stairs in the building. We were in the Guadalupe room, and she was coming down the stairs, and she was talking to all these people. Now I know there was Michael Warsell there, and there was Chris Wigmer, and some other people were all there with her. But I could hear her talking and laughing, and I never will forget that laugh of when her coming down the stairs talking to everyone. And I remember later, I can't remember who it was that told us, but one of them said when they proposed something to Mother for a decision that she needed to make, that they needed to make sure they had all the facts there, because Mother would make her decision, and that was probably going to be the final answer. So you better be prepared, and better be ready to with all of your facts, because she was going to answer and she was going to make that decision. And I've always remembered that about her, because even though she was a very strong very strong executive. She was so approachable and so loving and so much fun. The joy that emanated from Mother was something. And I don't know, I can hardly look at a picture of her without crying. I loved her.
And I'm sure, Donetta, even though you never had the opportunity to meet Mother Angelica, I'm sure she was an inspiration for you on some level as you got this thing started, and you probably rely on her in your day-to-day operations, huh?
Absolutely. I think I've read every book that has come out about Mother Angelica, and I have some of her prayer books that we can pray the Rosary with her devotions in the Stations of the Cross, and I just really, really appreciate doing that because it makes me feel closer to her. And we are one church. You know, she's still with us, I believe. So
Absolutely.
And she is a native of the great state of Ohio, where you reside, Bernadette. And I'm sure that your fellow Ohioan has been a big inspiration to you guys at the Rock.
Absolutely. You know, Mother took her first vows at St. Paul's Shrine in downtown Cleveland, where the Poor Clares of Perpetual Adoration are still there. And so we feel a very strong tie to her. And anytime we have a big decision to make, the question will always come up, what would Mother do? What would Mother do? And sometimes Mother would take risks. And based on that, we've taken some risks and done things and trusted in divine providence, and we've never been disappointed. So I know she's watching out for us and interceding for us. And so she remains a big part of everything we do.
So none of these radio stations are autonomous to one person, and they can't be run by one person. Even the smallest of stations needs a team of people. Donetta, how have you found that your particular charisms as a woman and using yours, as our late Holy Father Pope John Paul, now Saint John Paul II said, your feminine genius, what are the benefits and what are the unique perspectives that you can bring into this venture from your perspective?
well, I don't know if it's part of the feminine genius, but I did have some organizational skills, and I think women have a tendency to have those more so because of running households. And so I just feel like I'm very organized and I just get things done, I guess. And I just take one hurdle at a time, just one hurdle. I don't look at the whole picture. It's just like, okay, we just got to get past this and then we can go on. And so I don't know if that's the feminine genius or not, but that was probably my gift and contribution.
And Bernadette, you have come from other nonprofit entities within the church and have been a woman in what some people would consider a man's world to a certain extent. You know, what experiences have you brought with you to the Rock that you think are maybe unique to you as a woman, plus your previous experience as well?
Well, I think being very attentive to our listeners and being responsive to what they need, and just being very appreciative of all the gifts. You know, this is God's apostolate. It's not ours. I always say this is God's work, and so we're just so grateful for all the people who've stepped up. And I do come from a fundraising background from other nonprofits, so I bring that with me, and just trying to be really appreciative and finding creative ways to basically invite people to join us in this apostolate and in this work.
And Teresa, Tony was really kind of the first person when you all were courting and during your engagement, was really the first person that kind of, leapt at this opportunity of getting involved in Catholic radio. To what degrees do you see your femininity complementing Tony's masculinity as you guys laid all the groundwork for getting Covenant Radio off the ground?
Well, I think mostly I kind of see a little bit like Donetta said, was I maybe see all the little things that need to happen and take care of all that. I also think that I'm maybe more the encourager or the nurturer of the staff, and of also not just the staff, but like all of our listeners. I think we form a bond very close with the family of Covenant Network.
You know, Bernadette, we talked before the program about, as I have the great opportunity as the general manager of EWTN Radio to interact with all of our 380 affiliated stations around the country, you see certain things from time to time that are challenges that are faced by organizations that are predominantly populated by men and males in the inner workings of the organization that you don't necessarily see all the time when you're dealing with organizations that have women in key positions at the top of the organization. Can you talk a little bit about how maybe the softer, more reasonable touch can really prevail sometimes when you're in situations where, you know, you have to make difficult decisions or you have to make situations that are difficult work?
Well, I think you always have to look at the big picture in terms of dealing with people and making those decisions. And I think being a woman gives you a sensitivity to how certain decisions are going to impact various people, whether it's staff, whether it's volunteers, whether it's donors, whether it's changes to programming and changing your schedule. And so I think we bring an added sensitivity to that as we make those decisions. And hopefully prayer is always a piece of that. And we're always praying for the Holy Spirit's guidance in those decisions as we make them.
Teresa, have you found situations, there's a certain amount of the secular culture that has to be engaged. The power company is not necessarily a Catholic entity in most places and things like that. So there are constantly outside influences from the world that have to be dealt with when you're operating a Catholic radio station. Have you found any hurdles or any things that were unique to you as a female that maybe you think may not have been such a big deal if you had not been a female?
Oh, I do think that certainly happens, but I tend to, when those issues are really, really hard and really tough, I do let Tony take those over, but we discuss them a lot and we do try to stop. We take everything to prayer. Like Bernadette said, everything goes to prayer. We pray through almost every decision. Tony is incredible about that, stopping and praying all the time, almost every single decision we make. And then maybe instead of slamming through and pushing through really hard on everything, I think we do. I think that the female side, we are that heart and breath of the organization. And so we can say, wait a minute, these are people too. We've got to make this decision. We've got to make this happen. But maybe we look at how we make that happen. It's always going to be a lot easier if we speak to them personally and make that decision and reach out to knowing what that one person needs and what we need and how to make both of those things happen. I think rather than just forcing an issue, you have to come to a consensus. And I think that's part of what women can help bring to the positions.
You know, Donetta, Teresa talked about nurturing, and just as part of what makes woman is a more nurturing personality. Women bring life into the world. Women are just more nurturing creatures by nature than men are. What kinds of things, and I would think that would really lead to perhaps relying more on our Lord and on prayer as opposed to relying on your own abilities that would maybe make being a woman in this situation advantageous.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I do a lot of adoration. I have from the beginning, and I would say adoration is why I'm here. God called me, I think, through my prayer time. So there were a lot of issues that, men thought I couldn't do this, and my feminine side said, I'm not afraid to fail. Now, maybe men are more afraid to fail, and so they wouldn't do anything that, would cause that. But my fear was going before God and him saying, I gave you a job to do and you didn't do it. So that was my biggest fear. So that if I tried Catholic radio and it failed, it it didn't work out, then, to me, that was no big deal. But God had other plans, and He's made it more than I could ever have imagined. We're getting ready to build our fourth station, and it's just amazing to me what He has done. Now, there have been times that I have dealt with people, and they're not listening to me, and I think maybe it's because they think I'm don't know what I'm talking about. So I'll tell Lester, my husband, this is what I need them to do. Will you call them and tell them? And they listen to him. Go figure.
Well, and it's interesting because I think a woman is more uniquely and innately has the virtue of humility to a degree that they're willing to do that. A lot of times a man in that situation, if he's in a situation that would be better handled by a woman, I quite frankly think a lot of times we men would just continue to bang our heads against the brick wall. And so I think a little maybe pragmatic stuff comes out of the feminine genius as well as we can continue to unwrap that. Bernadette, as we look at the soundboard and the radio equipment that are behind Donetta in her video frame here, we think about the technical aspects of operating a radio station. Could little 8-year-old Bernadette skipping through the streets of Cleveland, Ohio, have ever imagined herself in charge of a radio operation?
Oh, absolutely not. I never in a million years thought I would be in Catholic radio, but I am so grateful that I am, and I just feel so incredibly blessed to be part of this apostolate. But it's, there's so many people that make this go, and I'm just so grateful that I was invited to be a part of it and be involved with the work that Mother started.
Teresa, I'm sure you grew up as a little girl just dreaming about one day being at the helm of 44 radio stations, huh?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Jack. No, I wanted to be a school teacher, and I was. And so I was a school teacher for 12 years, and I loved it and enjoyed that. But I kept feeling this call to do something for the church. So I was volunteering, at night after school, working and church rectories and helping out with that and doing just little things around there. And then I met Tony, and he had this calling already, but at the time he was actually getting ready to start a Catholic television network. There, he was going to be running an affiliate that carried Catholic EWTN on the UHF channel here in St. Louis. And then gradually, as we started getting to know each other more and dating more and coming to, and he knew that his call originally was not Catholic television. God was calling him to do Catholic radio, and that didn't exist. But he had been he'd been really affected by the talks by Scott Hahn, and so Tony was buying cassettes by the caseload and passing them out to anybody that he could find that would take one. And then one day he just thought, I could reach more people if I could put this on the radio. And so that's when he really started looking into doing Catholic radio. And I was involved at that time, and I couldn't think of a better thing to do for me to be involved with, to be in Catholic radio and reach so many people. But my thought was that I could run the office and I could make be in contact with all the people, and that's great. I thought that's what I was going to do. But gradually, person by person, we kept on the original staff from the radio station that we purchased, and one by one, they all started leaving until one day. We had one person left, and at that time the stations were not run by a computer. We didn't have any computer programs, and so you had to physically be there every hour we were on the air. And the next day I was the one that was going to have to run the board. of a sudden I'm not just running the office, I'm also running the studio. And so, but you learn piece by piece, make your mistakes and get going. And you know what? I miss those days. It was so much fun. I loved doing that. It would take me a long time to get back into that again, doing that full time. But now, it's nice having the programs that you can program ahead in the computer. But those were fun days.
So, ladies, thank you so much for being so gracious with your time. In the last few moments that we have here, what would you say to maybe challenge women who may be watching the program today who may have never dreamed that they could conceivably be called to apostolic life? What would you say to them, Donetta?
I would say go to if you can take an adoration, like we have a 24-hour adoration chapel, but there's a lot of churches that just have adoration a certain period during the week. If you can go to adoration and just ask God, how can you serve him? How can you serve him? And see what he does.
Bernadette, what would you say?
I would echo what Donetta said, but I would also say don't be afraid. If you really feel that you're called, take that first step, and you don't have to figure it all out at once, but take that first step, make that first phone call, make that first connection, and see where God's going to lead you.
Teresa?
My thoughts exactly were adoration and prayer. We started the apostolate really through Tony's daily hour of adoration. And I think the best thing for anybody to do is to spend time in adoration if you can each day. It doesn't have to be an hour, it could be 5 minutes. And if you can't get to an adoration chapel, go to church. And even if the church is locked, sit outside the church. The Lord's right there. Be there and take yourself, whatever's nagging at you to find an answer, sit there and be with the Lord, offer yourself to him and let him tell you what he wants you to do.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of our guests, Teresa Holman, Donetta Robin, and Bernadette Boguski, I'm Jack Williams. Thanks so much for tuning in today to Catholic Sphere. And don't forget to tune in next week, right here on the Catholic Sphere.